Every once in a while, we come across a book that has been hyped to the moon and the stars, so we read it, and we want to love it. But sometimes we just don't. Sometimes we just like it. And in itself, that's fine. Not everything is for everyone. But something that I think we get caught up in here in the book space is correlating our like of something as a qualitative stamp of approval. I like this, and therefore it is good. And sometimes, in certain fan bases, this turns into, I like this and therefore it is good, and anyone who disagrees with me is wrong and an idiot or just didn't get it. And I don't think that we can become so over-engrossed in our appreciation for a book that we fail to see its shortcomings and limitations. We can love things that have flaws. I think love would be impossible otherwise. Take, for instance, The Knight and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I, with every part of me, wanted to love The Knight and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, but I didn't. I just like The Knight and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. And that's okay. Not everything is for everyone. On the surface, The Knight and the Moth checks a lot of my boxes. It is a medieval and Gothic-inspired adventure novel with some richly layered themes. It has a unique and interesting magic system, and some aesthetically very cool world building. There is some debate about whether or not it is a romantasy or a fantasy with romance, and I think that's for the reader to decide. But for me, this was a book that set a handful of high marks and came up just short in almost all of them. There were only 2 characters in this book that I even remotely cared about, and they were not the main 2. Once the romance kicks in, and there is romance, and it does kick in because this is Rachel Gillig we're talking about, it kind of overpowers the remainder of the book, and that's just not something that I'm interested in, especially when it's pretty surface level like here. And I knew there would be a bit of that going in based on my familiarity with Gillig's other books. The world building, once we delve into it, is kind of one-dimensional, cheap, and inconsistent. For instance, the kingdom is called Traum. Traum is German for dream. If you know, you know. It seems clever, it isn't really. Kind of like how in Fourth Wing when you learn that Ternanach is just Scots Gaelic for thunder. I found most of the character development in this story to be kind of one-dimensional and uninspiring. As I mentioned earlier, I did not really care for most of our characters. And I felt that Rachel Gillig struggled to teach us anything about the Kingdom of Traum or the world or the characters with anything that didn't border on an exposition dump. And there is one pretty egregious exposition dump at the end. But she does excel at building some very cool lore and tying that into a unique and interesting magic system. But as someone who really values deep world building, her shortcomings were just a little too much for me in this regard. I think that an action or plot-heavy book can carry a lot of the weight of a lack of world building, but that's not really what we get here. But if you're someone who's more interested in overall vibe, or is predominantly concerned with romance or character interaction, this might be up your alley. I think this is a book that largely gets by on vibe. It has good vibe. And that doesn't make it bad, it just makes it so-so for me. In my continuation of not rating books, I'm not going to tell you that The Knight and the Moth is a bad book, because I don't think it is a bad book. I think Rachel Gillig is a really talented author. I think that just perhaps her style of writing is not something that jives for me. She's very talented, she has some very cool ideas. I think sometimes she just struggles to pull them off. But The Knight and the Moth can still be a good book for you.